Welcome to Live DAF, your online DAF Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem and welcome back to today's DAF HaYomi, GITTEN Mem Daled. We are on the second line from the top, Tanu Rabbanon. So in the previous Mishnah we have learned that the Chachamim applied a knas, a penalty, on an owner of an Evet Kanani who sold him to a goy or sold him to somebody living in Chutz La'aretz. And the reason is because the Evet Kanani is currently doing some mitzvahs, like an Isha. And when he sells him to a goy, that situation will most likely prevent him from doing mitzvahs, from resting on Shabbos, etc. Likewise, if he sells him off to Chutz La'aretz, then he'll have to stop doing those mitzvahs which he was doing in Eretz Yisrael, like Trumos and Maasros, and as such the Chachamim forbade it, and if the owner violates, there is a knas applied, the Evet goes free. So in the case of selling him to the goy, the former owner has to actually facilitate his release. He has to redeem him and set him free. Today's Gemara will deal with many scenarios involving this halacha, this knas, of a moicher avdoi lo'eved kechav. As we learned yesterday, this applies not only if he sells him to a goy, but even if he turns the Evet into a mashkain. So Reuven borrowed money from a goy, designating the Evet as a collateral, as a fallback, which the goy will collect if the Yisrael defaults on the loan. That as well is tantamount to selling the Yisrael, the Evet to the goy, and the same knas will apply. Provided he designated, he was miyached this Evet as a collateral. But Tanu Rabban, we learned in a price. So Gov ay b'chayvay. Suppose the Yisrael did not initiate that designation. He borrowed money from a guy. Comes due date. The guy comes looking for something to repossess, and he repossesses this Evet. That's a totally different story, because he wasn't offered by the Yisrael. He wasn't designated as a collateral. Gov ay b'chayvay. So if the guy goes and repossesses the Evet on account of his debt, Sikrikin, Rashi explains, there was a point in time in history when the Goyim had the upper hand and would threaten to kill the Yisraelim. So he threatened to kill the Yisrael, and the Yisrael says, look, take this piece of karka, or take this Evet, and leave me alone. As such, the Goy now repossessed this Evet, took ownership of this Evet. In both cases, whether he was Goyve b'chayvay, or through the Sikrikan, the Evet has no right to go free. Because, as Rashi says, it was an oinus. You can't hold the Yisrael accountable for this. And as such, the knas does not apply. So even if the guy had a right to repossess the Evet on account of the loan, which the Yisrael defaulted on, that's not considered part of this takana, part of this knas. V'ramini. Listen to this brayso. So the authorities repossessed the Israel's granary, right, with all the grain in it. What is the status regarding truma and maser? Does the farmer have to actually go ahead and find some other grain to designate as truma, as maser, for the grain which was stolen from him? So it depends. If the reason why they grabbed it was because of money which was owed, right, which he defaulted on, chayiv la'aser. In that case, he's gaining from this repossession. It's basically being applied to his debt, so he may not benefit from the truma and maser that's contained in that granary. He has to go find other grain and consider that to be the truma for the granary, because it's like he sold it to them. Okay, so he's responsible for the truma and the maser. But in ba'an paris, if they just took it for no good reason, Rashi says an paris means hefset. It was just a write-off, a loss. They just stole it from him. There's no sale, there's no gain. I'm not responsible. Potter mila'aser, I don't have to do the maser on that grain. But if they took it for a loan, He took it to pay off a debt in Bechayva. He is chayiv in Maser. Apparently, we consider this to be like a sale. So the same thing about the Eved. True, I didn't designate. I didn't make this Eved into an apoitiki. Okay, I didn't initiate it. Fact is, I owed the money. I defaulted. The guy took my Eved. Says, oh, I sold it to him. And when I sell an Eved to a guy, there is a knas. So why do we say there isn't? Shani Hasam de Kamishtar Shilei. The big difference between the grain and the Eved. The reason why I'm responsible for the maser portion of that grain is because, after all, I'm gaining. They repossessed 100 pounds of wheat, valued at X, which will now obliterate my debt. So I have benefited from the entire volume. Whatever was there is now going to be applied to my loan, including the Truma and Maser portions within that. So I'm responsible for that. That makes sense, but by the Eved, what is the Knas? Chachamim instructed an owner of an Eved not to sell, not to initiate a sale. Don't sell your Eved to a guy. Did I do that? Did I initiate this process? He came on his own and repossessed my Eved on account of the debt, the loan which I wasn't paying. Okay, he had a right to do that, but I didn't initiate it. I didn't offer the Eved. You can't hold me accountable. You can't apply a knas for handing over the... I didn't hand them over. So there is no knas. Tashma. Here comes another kasha. Dama Rav tells us, Hamoicher avdoi lefarhang. This fellow is a troublemaker. Rashi says he is a meitzik v'sam alilos. He makes up stories and I owe them money, and a big troublemaker. So the only way to get him off my back is by sometimes I have to cooperate and comply. So I sold my Eved to the Farhang. Hamoicher Abdullah Farhang Eved Gechavim. This gangster. Yotza Lacheres. In this case, the Eved has a right to go free. The question is, why? I didn't initiate it. It wasn't my idea. I was forced to do so. And if in this case we say the knas applies, why is it different than the case of the guy repossessing my Eved on account of the loan which I defaulted on? Big difference, says the Gemara. Hassam, in the case of the farhang, of this manipulator, gangster, the owner could have appeased him, could have paid him off on the side, instead of letting him take the Eved. And he failed to do so. He wasn't mefayis him through another means. Rather, he offered him the Eved. So although it wasn't wasn't something he was happy to do, but the fact is, he had another option, which he failed to cash into. He chose this option. And therefore, it's tantamount to selling the Eved. Gufa, let's just go back to this halacha, and we're going to try to build on that. Right? So if he allows the gangster to repossess the Eved, to forcibly buy the Eved, so then the Eved has a right to go free. The question was, why is the owner at fault? Because he had another option. Could have found another way to get the farhang off his back. When this fellow started stirring up trouble and rumors about him owing him money, he could have paid him off on the side. He didn't have to. He didn't have to, give him the Eved to account for his false demands. So ultimately, he's responsible for the transfer of the Eved. Okay, so that's a given. Now we're going to sort of ask, present various scenarios which are sort of similar to this, and try to figure out the halachas. By Rabbi Yirmiyah. So Rabbi Yirmiyah asks like this: what if the owner of the Eved sells the Eved to a guy, but it's a limited sale, 30-day sale. after which he goes back to the Israel. Mahu, what would be the halacha? Do we apply the knas because after all he sold the Eved, or do we not apply the knas because it's just it's a limited time deal, after which he goes back to the Israel and he can do as many mitzvahs as he wants? Mahu, what is the halacha? Tashma, perhaps we could bring a raya from this halacha, the Amar Rav, Hamaycher Avdei Lefarhang Ovid Kechavim, Yatzel Lecheres. So if the Eved is transferred to this gangster, he goes free. The Gemara figures at this point that this fellow plans on giving him back to the Israel. It's just a limited time thing. He takes him for to build some bridges and build some roads for the authorities. It's just a limited thing. And as soon as he's done his quota, he takes him back to the owner. Oh, so you see from here that even a limited time snatch, even a limited time goyish ownership warrants the knas. No, it's incorrect. This farhang keeps him forever. He's not going back to the Israel, and therefore it makes sense that the knas is applied. But if it would have been just a limited thing, perhaps we would not apply the knas. That remains unknown. Next question. So the owner sells the Eved to a guy, but he stipulates, look, the Eved is yours, so you can marry him off to a Shefcha Knanis, you can have the children avodim, but the Eved himself, he's not going to serve you. Okay? So you can't enslave him. What is the halacha in this case? On the one hand, he sold him to a guy. On the other hand, the whole point is because it's going to prevent him from doing mitzvahs. Well, in this case, since he's not bound to work for the guy, he's not meshubah to him, perhaps it's not getting in the way of his mitzvahs. That's one question. Chutz min ha-mitzvahs ma'u. Let's say he sells him to the guy, and he says, he's your slave except for anything that interferes with the mitzvahs of the Eved. Does that give us the assurance that the Eved will be able to perform his mitzvahs unencumbered, or perhaps the knas applied in this case as well? Chutz mishabasas v'yavim tovim ma'u. Another form of sale. Let's say he sells him the Eved and says, except for Shabbos and Yom Tov. So now we know that the Eved can rest on Shabbos and Yom Tov as much as he wants. Is that sufficient to address our concerns? Or perhaps it's not enough, because after all, there are other mitzvahs as well that he might not be able to perform. Next question. L'ger Toshav. Suppose he sells the Eved to a guy who's called a ger Toshav because he's adhering to the 7 mitzvahs b'nei noyach, he doesn't worship idols, etc. So he's sort of in between. He's not a full-fledged guy. What is the halacha there? L'Yisrael mu'mar ma'u. What if he sold to a Yisrael who's straight from the Torah path? L'kusi ma'u. What about to a kusi who's not exactly meticulous in mitzvah performance? What would be the halacha in these cases? Would we apply the knas or not? Says the Gemara, so this is all coming from Rabbi Yirmiyah, right? Peshoit mi'achad. We can at least conclude on one question. Clarify one of these fakers. Because we have a brisa. Ger Toshav. Harayu ka'ovid kechavim. That a ger Toshav, a guy who keeps the 7 mitzvahs, is regarded like a guy with respect to this halacha of knas. And the brisa continues regarding a kusi or a Yisrael mumar. There are 2 girsas in the brises, 2 versions. Amrila, some have a girsa, we treat him ka'ovid kechavim, and some had a girsa of Amrila ki Yisrael. So one thing's for sure. The question was selling him to a ger Toshav. What status does that have? The answer is as though he sold him to a guy. Okay, continuing on the same path. Bo minei Rabbi Ami. So the Bnei Yeshiva asked Rabbi Ami, what about the following story? Eved shehipel atzman legayosis. An Eved was so frustrated by his owner, he's going to get out of there at all cost. So he goes ahead and he offers himself to the bandits. He's taken captive. Now he's being held by the Goyshe bandits, and the owner has no recourse, no way of extracting his Eved. Loi B'dini Yisrael, not via the Jewish court system, V'loi B'dini Oived Kechavim Lahavdil, not using the secular court system. He's there, he's gone. Mahu Sheyitel is Damav. Couldn't the Yisrael owner at least try to extract the value? Apparently, they're willing to strike a deal. The Eved, they're never going to return, but they're willing to pay to compensate the owner. Does he have a right to do that or not? Basically, the question is, for me to accept payment on account of my Eved who was snatched, is that tantamount to selling the Eved? In which case the Knas would apply, or not? May I do that or not? After all, he's gone. He's out of my hands. May as well at least get payment for him, or not. Maybe it's Asr. Amalei Rabbi Yirmiyah. So Rabbi Yirmiyah turns to Rabbi Zrika. Paik ein v'mechiltach. Go out and do some investigation. Look into your sources, into your Mishnahs and Braisos. Perhaps you'll come up with a solution to this question. Nafak. He went out, Dak, Vashkach, and he investigated, and in fact he uncovered a Brais, a source. We have a similar halacha regarding a Yisrael selling real estate in Eretz Yisrael. He may not sell his house to a guy in Eretz Yisrael. Rashi says it's based on the pasuk Lo yisechonim, lo yisitem lehem chaniya b'karka. One may not facilitate a guy's owning of karka in Eretz Yisrael. And if he does so, damav asur, the money which he received is asur. Suppose the guy forcibly repossessed the bais of Yisrael in Eretz Yisrael. The owner, the poor owner, has no recourse, no way of extracting the house. At least, you can go ahead and accept compensation from the guy. Umala ba'arkoy shalahem. And not only that, listen to this, he's allowed to even write a shtar mechira, a sale document, as though he sold the house to the guy. Umala ba'arkoy shalahem, even though he's putting it through the non-Jewish court system, which gives them chashivas and shows he's giving them credibility. Why? Even though he may not sell this house, but in this case, it's not up to him. It's gone. It's out of his hands. It's as though he's just, saving, he's salvaging something. At least let him get compensation, let him get paid for the house. Bottom line, by the Eved as well. There's no knas. If the Eved was stolen from him, and the poor owner is just trying to get back some money. There's nothing wrong with that. Says the Gemara, perhaps there is a distinction between the house and the Eved. Perhaps there's more concern by the Eved, and we shouldn't allow it. You know why? Perhaps this heter of accepting payment by the bais only applies to a bais. The kiven delay sagilibly bais, because since one's home is a very critical and important component in his life, person can't live without a home. It's very unlikely that he'll sell his home, so it's a very unlikely situation that he'll offer his home for sale. And therefore, in this case, we say, okay, at least get paid for it. It's not going to, very far chance, it's going to lead to a situation where a person will offer his house for sale. Avda, when it comes to an Eved, who's not so critical to its owner, the sagil Avda, person could be without an Eved. Asal is perhaps allowing him to accept payment might lead to him actually selling the Eved in the future. That's one way to look at it. Or perhaps not. Fact is, he was snatched from my hands. I was given the opportunity to accept payment. Let me at least get that. Shalachlu Rabbi Ami. So this question was posed to Rabbi Ami. Rabbi Ami responded to them. Mini, from myself, from me. Ami Bar Nosson, that was his name, Ami Bar Nosson. Torah, this ruling, Rashi says, Torah is Lashon Hayra. This ruling, this psak halacha, Yoytzel L'chol Yisrael. So this psak is coming from me to all of Yisrael. I'm very clear on this halacha. Eved shehipel atzma l'gayasa, is that in fact an Eved who ends up by the bandits, who avail themselves to the bandits. Ve'ein rabba yachal le'etzioi le'bedini Yisrael. leaving the owner without any recourse, without any ability to retract the Eved. Mutar lital as dama, he's allowed to accept compensation for the Eved, and put it through the Gosher court system, just like the home which was taken. He's just salvaging his property. At least let him get paid for it. Nothing wrong with that. Okay, continue on the same topic. Amar b'Shimon Levi. So we all know by now that one may not sell his Eved to a guy. If he does so, he's meant to try to redeem him. Amar b'Shimon Levi. Hamecher avdel gechavim koinsim oised admei b'damav. End of story. The owner has to go ahead and redeem him, even if it's going to cost him 100 times the value of the Eved. Even if the guy is inflating the deal, he's required to redeem him. Question: Dafka, when he says 100, literally 100? Or lav dafka, or perhaps it's just an expression. It means he has to go all out, but it doesn't mean 100 times as much. Tashma, we're going to prove that it isn't exactly 100 times as much. So we learned this in Masechus Avodah Zarah. You're not meant to sell a behema gasa, like a cow or an ox, to a guy. Many reasons given in the Gemara. You're not meant to do that. And if he does that, he has to go redeem the animal, even if it's going to cost him 10 times the value. So apparently when we spoke about 100 times, it's not necessarily 100. The Gemara is equating the two halachas. And just like over here, it's just 10. By the Eved as well, we don't mean 100 literally. No, says the Gemara. Maybe it is literally. It is exact. When it comes to an animal, okay, 10 times as much is sufficient. You don't have to go beyond 10 times as much of the value. But when it comes to the Eved, perhaps it's more severe. Because remember, every day, he's mafkalim mitzvahs. He can't do mitzvahs Sunday and Monday and Tuesday. Since it's so critical, perhaps, the owner has to go ahead and pay even 100 times as much. There was a different version of this Gemara. If one sells an Eved to a guy, the knas is applied. Up to how much? Even 10 times as much. Dafka or lav dafka? Is it exactly 10 or maybe even more than 10? Tashma, we have a raya that it's more. Damarish lakish. One sells an animal. He has to be willing to redeem him even by paying 100 times as much. So you see, it goes way more than 10. No, says the Gemara. Maybe the Eved, 10 is enough. By the animal, you need more. Shani Eved lehadalei. Perhaps by the behema, okay, even 100 times as much. But by the Eved, maybe 10 is specific. You know why? Shani Eved lehadalei, because remember, he's not getting back the Eved. The owner has to go redeem him, and then he goes, poof, he goes free. So 10 is a reasonable amount, but more than that, we're not going to obligate him because he's not getting back the Eved, but the behema gets back the behema. So it makes sense that he's more responsible. He has to be willing to lay out even 100 times as much. 1 second. How do you go from 10 to 100? Just because I'm getting back the animal, so add another one. Go from 10 to 11. Because I'm getting back the animal, so that value I'm getting back, so I'm responsible for that. So go from 10 times the value to 11. How do you get to 100? Ela behema. So what do you mean by the behema time? Why is he more responsible? Mishum dahadrolid, because he's getting him back. Add another one to the knas from 10 to 11. So that can't be the reason for the disparity in the numbers. Ella, rather, here's another reason. The reason why we're not so severe, we don't come on so strong when it comes to the Eved. Eved musla shchicha, selling an Eved to a guy, it's not such a common thing that a person would, sell his Eved to the guy. Or milsad lo shchicha, like Gazvi Rabbana, we know that throughout Shas, Chachamim, we're not so concerned about things which aren't so uncommon, So selling an Eved, period, and especially to a guy, it's an uncommon thing. And therefore we suffice with a relatively limited penalty, which is you have to redeem him up to 10 times value. As opposed to Mechiras Behema, which is a very common daily occurrence, and therefore Chachamim were more strict about it. You violate, you get a knas up to 100 times the value. Ba'minei Rabbi Yirmiyah, Rabbi Asi. Here comes another question. So, Reuven owns an Eved, sells him to a guy. He violated the Isser. The Knas is now triggered. He has to go redeem the Eved. Umeis. Reuven passes away, and there's a Yerush, a son, taking the father's place. Question. Mahu sheyiknesu es bnei achrav. Does the Knas, which had been activated on the father upon selling the Eved, is it now transferred to the son, and the son is now obligated to redeem the Eved from the guy, or not? On the one hand, you could say, look, the son is totally not responsible for what his father did. So, don't hold him accountable. On the other hand, you can say, the fact is, there are some assets which are now being transferred from father to son, and the Knas of Chachamim was sort of applied to the assets, the estate of the father, which was deemed responsible for the redemption of the Eved. And that carries over to the kid. Interesting question. Continues the Gemara. We have several precedents to this discussion throughout Shas. And let's see if we can compare this question, our discussion, to those discussions. Imtim Selema, perhaps you'll suggest, to clarify our discussion, our shaila, based on a suffix which was discussed elsewhere regarding a bechor. So the halacha is that a kohen gets the firstborn animal, the bechor. Now, when there was no Beis HaMikdash, what does the kohen do with the bechor? If there is a Beis HaMikdash, so you bring him as a carbon. But otherwise, it's very difficult for the kohen to deal with the bechor. He can't do anything with it until he gets a mum, a real serious blemish. Now, one can't just inflict a mum on his bechor. It's an isser deraisa. What if he does so? The kohen takes his bechor and sick and tired of raising the bechor, and he goes and inflicts a mum on the bechor, hoping that, nowadays a bal mum, you can go shech the bechor anywhere. There's a knas. Chacham made a knas, a penalty, you can't use it until there's another mum that arrives naturally, uninitiated, and then he can have the animal. So, the same question can be applied there. Let's say the kohen father inflicted a mum, and now the Chacham made a knas, you can't use the bechor. The father died. The kid took over. Does the knas carry over to the kid or not? So perhaps that can provide clarity regarding our question as well. Same idea. Does a knas carry over or not? Imtim Salima, perhaps you'll seek a solution from the halacha of tsaram, oizen, bechor, he clipped the ear of the bechor, umeis, and he died. Konso b'nai achrav. And if we're going to say in that case that the knas applies to the son as well, he cannot consume the bechor in this state. So perhaps here as well, we see that Chachamim applied a knas to the son, and here as well, the son of a father who sold his Eved to a guy has to endeavor to redeem him, because he takes over the knas. No, says the Gemara, there's a big difference. You realize there, the father committed an isur min atayra mishum de isur d'oraisahi when he made the mum on his bechor. So perhaps that's more severe. And therefore the Chachamim made an absolute knas. Nobody can enjoy this bechor, even the son. Avalach isur d'rabbanan, as opposed to selling an Eved to a guy, it's an isur d'rabbanan. Perhaps we're not so strict. So that wouldn't provide clarity to our discussion. Next option, we have another case, which is discussed in Maseches Mayit Katan. So we know that, malacha is asr on chalamayit, but davar ha'avid, something which involves financial loss, if it's not done now, it's going to be severe financial loss. That can be done in Chol HaMoed. Except if a person plans it. He facilitates that situation. He pushes off the malach until Chol HaMoed, davar of it. We don't allow him to proceed. It's called kivin malachte b'moed. He planned it out for Chol HaMoed. There's a knas that disallows any malacha of that nature. What if the father planned it out, but then he passed away and the son is stuck with the davar of it, which he did not facilitate? It's not his fault. It's father's fault. So we have the same discussion there, whether the Isser, the Rabbanon, carries over to the Kiranat. So perhaps that can provide a precedent for our discussion. Perhaps you'll tell me. The Raya can be from the case of Kivan Malachta b'moed. A person planned this malacha for Chol HaMoed, umeis and dies. Lo concept achrav. In that case, perhaps the knas does not apply to the son. So we'll compare it to our case of a moicher ever to guy. Again, a big difference. There, perhaps it's more lenient because even the father, after all, he didn't actually do an Isser. He almost did an Isser. He was preparing for an Isser. But he didn't actually carry out an Isser. He mapped out his business in a way that he's going to do the malachan, but then last minute he didn't do it. So since an Isser wasn't actually violated, we don't carry over the penalty to the son. But in this case, where the father sold an evet to the guy, he did an Isser. What happens in this case? Shall we say that the Isser only applies to the father who violated, who committed the Isser? Well, let's say he's no longer here. So the knas expires. Or the knas applies to the actual estate, his assets. Those assets are here, in the son's hands. So which way do we go? Amr Leisi responded to Nesua. I have an answer to your question from a Mishnah discussing the 7th year, Shvius. Sadash Niskavtza b'Shvius. So it's on Shemitah. This fellow went ahead and removed the thorns and things like that, which is an Issa d'Rabbanan, to enhance the field, but it wasn't an actual malacha, which constitutes an Issa min HaTorah, just Issa d'Rabbanan. Even though it wasn't something to be done, Tizar al-Matzai Shvius. But it's mutter to use the field right after Shvita, without any delay. There's no knas applied. However, Netaiva, suppose it was seriously, enhanced by a fertilizer, or Nedaira, it's another form of fertilizing. They take animals there and they bring the animals, they make it into sort of an animal pen. So this is a true, Rashi calls it avodas karka. It's actually a real enhancement of the field. Loi tizar l'matzei shvius. So in this case, we say that there's a knas, the Rabbanon applied, that come matzai shmita, you have to wait, and you can't work the field the next year. That's it. It's a knas. We have this as an accepted halacha. Haytiva umeis. So let's say father violated this halacha, and he died. B'nai zera. Son can come along and work the field matzai shmita. So what do we see? Alma, apparently, l'didei kansu rabbanon. The knas only applies to the father who violated the halacha. L'brei like kansu rabbanon, but not to the son. So it's a clear-cut conclusion here. Now, when it comes to a issa d'rabbanon committed by a father, although a knas would apply, but if the father is no longer here, the knas does not apply to the kid. Likewise, in the case of the meicher avdei lo'evd kechavim, he did an issa d'rabbanon, a knas should apply. But if he's meis, the kid is not responsible. Amar Abaye, says Abaye, in a similar vein, naktinan, we know this as an halacha, timei taharais shel chaverei. So Reuven approached Shimon's fruit, which was tahar, and he was metamei it. So he damaged them, but it's not a visible, it's not a tangible damage. It's a spiritual, had a spiritual effect. Umeis, and then Reuven passed away. Loi kansu rabbanim le'achrav. So typically we would require Reuven to compensate Shimon for that damage, even though it's not nikar, it's not visible. But in the spiritual worlds it is, and therefore he's chayiv. But loi kansu rabbanim le'achrav, after all, it's just a knas. It's not an actual, visible, tangible damage, and therefore his son is not responsible. My time and why? Hezek she'en nikar leishmi hezek. Inflicting this type of invisible damage does not constitute damage minat Torah, which obligates compensation. It's only obligated by the Rabbanon. So the perpetrator himself is obligated to pay, but librei, if he's not around, and it's just his son around, like Kansu Rabbanon, there's no knas applied by the Rabbanon. So in the meantime, let's just recap the first part of our daf, which discusses a fellow who sold his eved to a guy. There's a knas applied. When is it applied? When is it not applied? So we spoke about the Yisrael actually selling him to the guy for no good reason. There's a knas, he must try to redeem him. If he designated the eved as a collateral for a loan that he took from the guy, there as well the knas applies. But if the guy initiated that repossession, he just was gaiva the eved by his own initiative. He was gaiva the eved, he took the eved on account of a loan which was owing to him by the Yisrael. In this case, there's no knas applied, the Yisrael is not at fault. The same thing with the sekrikoin, so if he threatened to kill the Yisrael and the Yisrael gave up the eved to satisfy him, that too does not qualify for knas. The Farhang case, which was basically a gangster who was alleging, some kind of financial charges and financial claims against Israel. He used the eved to pacify him. That is to the owner's detriment. That would generate a knas. We had a couple of cases. He sold him just for a short time, Lamed Yoim, or he left out Shabbos and Yom Tov, or left out Malacha, etc., etc. We left that as a question mark. If he sold him to a Ger Toishav, that is like selling him to a guy. In the next part of the Gemara, we discussed an eved who availed himself to the bandits. He handed himself over to the Gayasais, and now the Yisrael can't get him back. May he accept compensation on that account? The answer is yes. Now, when we say a knas, which requires the Adin to redeem him, he has to go and satisfy the buyer, even if he inflates his price. We're not sure about the exact number. Is it 10 times as value, or even up to 100 times? And we concluded that since it's only a knas d'Rabbanan, it only applies to the actual perpetrator, meaning the father. But should the father sell him and then pass away, the son is not responsible. Okay, let's move on to the second part of our daf. So part 2, so to speak, of this takana, of this knas, was selling an eved kanani to chutz la'aretz. Even if he's selling him to a Yisrael, but if it's from Eretz Yisrael to outside of, then the same knas would apply. The eved has a right to go free, and the second owner has no right to hold on to him. And the reason is because he was deprived of the unique mitzvahs which are specific to Eretz Yisrael. The mitzvahs hatuliyos ba'aretz. So we're going to learn when it does apply and when it does not apply. Tanu Rabbanan hamecher avdei l'chutz la'aretz. We say yatsa l'cheres, but v'tzarech get shechror. Although he goes free, but he needs to get a release document from who? From his new master, the legal owner. Me Rabbi Sheni. Rabban Shimon Gamliel Aimer pa'amim yatsa, upa'amim lo yatsa. At times the eved goes free, at times not. Ketzad. What is which? Amar Pliny Avdi. So let's say the owner who's selling him records a document as follows. He says, my eved Joe, Michartihu Leploini Antuchi. So Antuchia was this place, this city, this locale, outside Eretz Yisrael. And he says in the Ishtar, I'm selling the eved to such and such fellow, Ruvain the Antuchi, who hails from Antuchi, a resident of Antuchi. It doesn't mean that the new owner is going to actually take the eved out of Eretz Yisrael. Maybe he's just it's just a point of reference. He's called the Antuchi, but maybe he currently lives in Eretz Yisrael and he's going to stay there. Lo yatsa, in this case, we don't see any indication that the owner intended on sending him out of Eretz Yisrael. And therefore, lo yotza, the Eved has no right to go free. But if the shtar features the following wording, la'antuchi sheba antuchya, I'm selling him to the Ruvain, the antuchi from Antuchya, that indicates that I'm willingly, sending my Eved out of Eretz Yisrael. I know that he's going back to Antuchya. So now Yotza, he has a right to go free. Asks the Gemara. So when it's just simply Antuchi, it doesn't generate a knas. For Tanya, we have a brayso mechartiu le'antuchi Yotza. If he's indicating that he's doing the sale with his fellow, the Antuchi, then that's indicative of Chutz La'aretz, and the Eved goes free. However, if he says Antuchi, I'm selling into an Antuchi man, Hashare Belud, who lives in Lud, which is in Eretz Yisrael, in that case, Lo Yatza, because it indicates locality, it indicates that he's staying in Eretz Yisrael. But just saying Antuchi is an indication of the fact that he's exporting him. And there we say it doesn't. So the word Leikasha, the answer is like this. If he's selling him to an Antuchi who is known to have a home in Eretz Yisrael as well, so there's good reason to believe that my intention was to sell him locally, to remain here. But in the Brayso, which indicates otherwise, that Antuchi is tantamount to an admission of exporting, that's when he doesn't really have a house. He just, has a temporary place of dwelling in Eretz Yisrael. In this case, there's good reasons to believe that when I indicate I'm selling him to an Antuchi, I know good and well that he's planning on taking the Eved with him back home to his permanent place of residence in Antuchia. Therefore, the Knas Chachamim applies. By Rabbi Yirmiyah, here comes an interesting question once again posed by Rabbi Yirmiyah, who is known to ask very intricate and technical questions. Ben Bavel Shenasa Isra Eretz Yisrael. Okay, so here we have a foreigner, a fellow from Bavel, who comes to Eretz Yisrael and marries there. And what does she bring into the marriage? She has slaves and maidservants who technically belong to her, but are now his responsibility to look after. These are called the Nichsei Tzoyin Barzel. He takes responsibility for the full value. Of course, he uses them, but he takes responsibility for them, and he must compensate her if indeed they get divorced or she becomes widowed from him. Okay, so currently he's the boss of the Avadim, but ultimately she's the owner. Now, although he came to Eretz Yisrael to marry, but he intends on returning to Chutz La'aretz. Question: what is the status of her Avadim? Mahu. What is the halacha? On the one hand, they're local, they're in Eretz Yisrael, no problem. On the other hand, ultimately, they're going to go back to Bavel with the husband when they move to Bavel. So, is it considered like having sold an Eved, as though she sold, when she married, when she consented to this marriage, which basically facilitated the transfer of ownership, so to speak, to the husband, who is a Chutz La'aretz resident, who's going to take these Avadim out of Eretz Yisrael? That is compared to selling an Eved to Chutz La'aretz. Now, this question could be posed according to the opinion that holds that she's in the right. So there is a discussion in the Gemara Ksubos, actually Yevamos, when it comes to these assets, right? Let's say an Eved, and they get divorced. Can she insist on getting the actual asset back, or can he say, "Look, I'll give you the value"? Hadin Imah means she's right; she gets the actual asset back. In this case, she gets the actual Eved back, and Hadin Imah means he's in the right; he can compensate her financially. So this question of ours, Tiboy Lamanda Omar, can be posed according to the opinion of Hadin Imah, that she actually gets back the Eved. She can insist on retrieving the actual asset. Tiboy Lamanda Omar Hadin Imah, it can be applied according to the Shita, which says that it's his prerogative to compensate her financially. How's that? Tiboy Lamanda Omar Hadin Imah. according to the Shita that she can insist on retrieving the actual asset upon divorce, since she has that upper hand, so then technically the Eved is really hers all along. And therefore it's not considered as though she sold it to the husband. So it's not considered selling an Eved to Chutz La'aretz. Or perhaps, given the Meshabdi lay, Leper, since these assets are committed to him in terms of their produce, basically it's just a term. It means to say, like, the Avadim have to work for him. He's benefiting from them. He has that ba'alus, that ownership right now. The Dedami will treat it like his. And how did he get it? From her. It's as though she sold it to him. And therefore, the Knas applies. And likewise, the same question can be posed, according to the other opinion, that ultimately he has the upper hand, he's in control, he can always keep the actual Eved and pay her for it upon divorce. So then, since that is the case, let's treat it like his, and it's as though it was sold to him, and the Knas applies. Or you can say, since currently speaking, he doesn't really own the actual Eved. He has right of use, but the actual Eved belongs to her. And even if they divorce, unless he compensates her for it, she gets it back. Therefore, let's treat it like hers. And there's no transfer of ownership. So which way is it? Take it, we leave it with a question mark. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Shanali Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda taught me as follows: Evet sheyotza acharabe l'Surya. Suppose the owner of the Eved left Eretz Yisrael and entered the territory called Syria, which is roughly today's Syria, which in some ways was equated to Eretz Yisrael. In some ways, it has a din of Chutz La'aretz, including the din of Meicher Avdei l'Chutz La'aretz. So if he sells it to Chutz La'aretz, to Syria, if you export the Eved to Syria, since it doesn't have the same status of Eretz Yisrael, it is considered like selling to Chutz La'aretz, and the Knas applies. We had this back on DAF Ches. So the owner walked out to Syria. The Eved followed him. Umachrei sham Rabbi. And right then and there, the owner sold him. Yotze l'cheres, he goes free. That's the halacha that Rabbi Yehuda taught me. Veha tani Rabbi Chia. The question is that so basically Rabbi Yehuda is highlighting an interesting chiddush, that even though the Eved left willingly, he followed his master, but he could easily come back to Eretz Yisrael. What is compelling him to get stuck, so to speak, in Syria? That's because his master sold him to a local resident, and therefore he goes l'cheres. Asks the Gemara, Rabbi Chia tells us otherwise. Ibeides schusay. Since the Eved left Eretz Yisrael willingly, he walked out on his own. So just because the owner sold him, too bad. The Eved loses that right to go free. Like Kasha, the answer is like this: Kansha das Rabbi Lachser. Kansha ain't das Rabbi Lachser. It all depends what the owner had in mind, what he was planning when he walked into Syria. In Rabbi Yehuda's halacha, Rabbi Yehuda's case involved a owner who planned on returning to Eretz Yisrael. He went out for a short trip. So although the Eved followed him, but his intention was to come back, and now he was sold off to a local resident and he has to stay there. That's unfair. That's called Meicher Avdei l'Chutz La'aretz. He goes free. Whereas in the Brisa, where we say the Eved has no right to go free, because he willingly, knowingly followed his master, who was planning on staying in Syria. So he gave up his Eretz Yisrael residency, so to speak, by following his master into Syria. So now when his master sold him, big deal. He was going to stay there in any case. So he has no right to go free. Vatanya. And likewise, we find in a Brisa, we're going to basically prove this terrace that we said, this distinction. That's all about intention and plans. Because we have the Brisa which says Yotzei ha'eved acharab l'Surya, which sounds a bit surprising. It almost sounds like the Eved has to. He's compelled to follow his master out to Syria. So if his rabbi is going to Syria today, he has to follow him. which is a little surprising. Yaitse, he must follow him. Loisagi, it's not sufficient, nothing that he doesn't follow him, that doesn't go out of Eretz Yisrael, meaning, why are we obligating him to follow his master and leave Eretz Yisrael? Atnan, we have a Mishnah in Maseches Ksubos. Ve'ein hakolim etzin. Nobody can force anybody. A husband can't force a wife. A master can't force an eved to leave Eretz Yisrael. So what do you mean we force him to leave? Elo, rather, the Brisa means, Yotza ha'eved acharabi l'Syria. Suppose, the eved willingly followed his master into Syria. U'machrei Rabbi Sham. And the owner found a good customer, right? And he sold off the eved right then and there. What does the Brisa say? Im das Rabbi Lachsar, if initially the owner had planned on returning to Eretz Yisrael, so it wasn't going to be a permanent, leave, then selling him locally is a problem. Kaifin Oisei, then we force the buyer to set the eved free, because the owner had no right to sell him there. He's an Eretz Yisrael resident. What are you doing selling him to Syria? Main das Rabbi Lachsar, but if the eved was fully aware of the fact that his owner had no intention of returning to Eretz Yisrael, and he followed him out to Syria, knowing that, and now the Adain sold him locally, so we can't force the buyer to release him, because the moment the eved left Eretz Yisrael with no plans of returning, he loses that right. This halacha no longer applies. And therefore, he belongs to the new owner. Okay, let's leave it at this and just recap this last piece of Gemara. So a fellow sells his eved to a customer at Chutz La'aretz, even to a Yisrael. The eved has a right to go free. The owner has to release him and give him a get shichrun. The same thing would apply to Syria. Unless, as we explained, the eved went out to Syria knowing that he's not going to return. What happens to an eved which belongs to a local isha in Eretz Yisrael, but she's now marrying a foreigner who plans on moving back? That was a shayla of Yirmiyah. We left it with a teiku. All the best to you and Atzlacha Rabbah.